Welcome. I'm really, really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, for having us, for letting WBRG, that Wild Bird Research Group, come and tell you a little bit about our organization and what we do. Um, yeah, I'm just going to jump right in and buzz through this so that we have plenty of time for discussion and questions. So, quick overview of what we're going to be doing today and talking about. We're going to I'm going to introduce myself to you all. I'm going to talk about our organization's history, where we do our work, then go in a little bit detail to some of those locations, the specifics of what we do in these different places, and then we'll talk about some of our non-banding projects that we're working on as well. And then I'm going to, of course, tell you all how you can get involved with us. And then we're just going to talk after that. Hopefully, we'll have a nice discussion and hopefully I'll be able to answer the questions that come up. That's always my goal. Um, I've got plenty of help from WBRG folks here and in the magic computer box too to help if I can't come up with an answer. So, me, my name's Ian Gray. I was born and raised in Sussex County, New Jersey, which birder folk may know because of the Delaware Water Gap and Old Mine Road and all that good stuff up that way. And then I moved to Mercer County, New Jersey, just across the river from PA here to go to school at the College of New Jersey and studied. Well, I started as an education major. That didn't quite pan out. I didn't like being in a classroom, but I mean, here we are. That's okay. I could spend a lot of time outside, and it's nice to have balance. So, studied at CCNJ, ended up getting a degree in ecology, and then worked in Mercer County for the Mercer County Park Commission as a stewardship manager for several years, working on ecological restoration. We were also doing things like citizen science point counts, those kinds of things. So a little bit of birds, a whole lot of plants, and some other stuff as well. Nowadays, I work for the United States Army at Picatinny Arsenal in northern New Jersey as a natural resources manager. So my day to day is usually in front of a computer looking over projects and making sure that we're following all of the Endangered Species Act laws, Migratory Bird Treaty Act laws, things like that that matter to all of us. I'm making sure that the Army plays within those rules as as my day to day job now. And then I also get to do species surveys on post, and that's how I get to escape the computer. So that's me, and that's plenty about me. Let's talk about what we're really here for, which is Wild Bird Research Group. So our mission as an organization is that we're here to conduct research and scientific studies that advance our understanding of bird populations. And we want to take what we learn and put that into action to educate people and inspire people, not just folks who are already birders like yourselves, but people beyond the people that are already indoctrinated into this whole bird thing. That's our mission. And our vision for this mission is seeing a world where what we're doing, sharing knowledge, researching, encourage everybody to be involved and to bring this ecosystem value to the forefront of everybody's mind. And I like this last line a lot, a future where people see the meaningful, tangible changes, both big and small. Not all conservation has to be massive victories, right? It's the little things, they add up, and that's what we're working towards. We like big stuff too. And here's our values. So I'm going to read all these because they all matter, and then I'll pretty much be done reading through a whole bunch of words on slides. So, collaboration. We cannot work alone. We are a small group of people, and we believe that collaboration with other scientists, land stewards, and organizations is what's going to allow us to succeed in our mission. Discovery. Continuous seeking out of new information through scientific inquiry. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Learning. We believe that we're always in a phase of lifelong learning for ourselves, everybody who volunteers with us, and our whole birding community, the community itself, our local and global communities that can and should play a role in stewarding the environment and protecting wildlife. So we are committed to growing, fostering, and connecting with those communities. Creativity, big one. WBRG believes in finding new pathways and bringing creativity and excitement for conservation efforts and educational programming around those conservation efforts. And then, of course, impact. We want what we're working towards to have real, measurable, data-driven impact on ecosystems, on the community, on the thing that we're all here for, which is birds. So how does it start? I am so happy that these pictures ended up in the slideshow. Some of these folks are on Zoom, and I don't know if they all knew that that first photo was in there, but our founders, Sean Grazer, Tyler Christensen, and Anthony Scuteri, got this whole thing started back in 2011. They were working under a woman named Hannah Suthers at the Princeton Banding Station in Hopewell, New Jersey. If any of you have ever seen the Peter Pyle guide, the bird banding the bird banding Bible, if you will, Hannah and her husband's name are all over the catbird pages. They've done a lot of really cool catbird research. So Sean, Tyler, and Anthony were all working under her, and from there got together and decided that the things they were learning in New Jersey could easily be applied elsewhere. And there was research happening on the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica where they ended up going, but not enough and not what they thought should be going on. So they got together and got some funding, got a couple grants, and went down there and started looking into neotropical migrants on their wintering territories on the Nicoya Peninsula, and then also some endemic species as well. And then it all came full circle when they realized, well, if we're putting this effort in down there, we can also do more back home where we learned all these banding techniques and research techniques that we're putting into work. So the big thing for us, and the thing that got it all started, is that we're a little bit different than a lot of the organizations out there doing banding work. We are not an academic institution. We are not a government institution, which means we can be a little more independent, a little more go with the flow with how we want to approach and pick out projects that we're going to do. Yes, we're still seeking grant funding. Yes, we're seeking donations, but we are able to be nimble. And as soon as a new question comes up, if it fits within something we're doing, we can pivot our project or expand our project to try to answer more questions. So as we talk more about the projects that we're working on, I want at the end of this, we can come back and maybe you folks could have some new questions that we may want to look into that we haven't thought of ourselves. So we'll get there at the end. Where are we banding? So, of course, we talked way at the bottom there about Costa Rica. That's where everything started in New Jersey, but that's where our three guys got together and kicked everything off. And now we have a lot of work going on in New Jersey, particularly Sean and Tyler are still in New Jersey, and Anthony lives down in North Carolina. So between these different locations, we've got a few different ecosystems that we're conducting research in, and a whole lot of people working on the ground on different projects. All right, so the first project I'm going to talk about, I might be a little biased towards, it's probably my favorite because I love songbirds. And this is Fiddlers Creek Preserve, which is in Mercer County, a 40-acre area that's a reforestation project. Deer fence around the whole area. It was farm field that had been tilled and tilled and tilled for over 100 years when the county acquired the property and decided to do this restoration work. So soil testing was done, soil amendments were done, fence was put up, and then a whole lot of plants were put in the ground with the idea of getting good native species growing, protected from deer, and having this finite area to be able to go in and do spot treatment of invasive plant species as they come up. The idea was within this little 40-acre patch, we'd be able to cultivate a really healthy native ecosystem. And this started back in 2012. project came about in 2011, the fence went up in 12. So with this project, the Mercer County Park Commission, which is one of our strongest partners at WBRG and a place that I happened to work for a while, they wanted to collect vegetation data in this area and have a strong, data bank of how in this controlled no deer situation, how the native plant populations and ecosystem would grow in a relatively natural way. And then WBRG at the same time came in and started doing MAPS banding there, which is monitoring avian productivity and survivorship, which is an Institute for Bird Populations standard protocol that a whole lot of stations use across the country for songbird banding in the breeding season. So what this ended up giving us was a whole lot of bird data over the last 10 plus years and a whole lot of vegetation data paired together. And we're able to see how certain bird species utilize the vegetation community at different points throughout its. Oh yeah, we've got a cedar waxwing here, which happens to be our 2026 bird of the year for Wild Bird Research Group. We've got some posts on Instagram and stuff talking about our bird of the year. They're just so lovely. Stare at them all day. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about Fiddlers Creek and how things have changed. So when the county first acquired the property, like I said, it was tilled over, old farm field, a lot of invasive forbs like mugwort and things like that. A whole lot of work was done. Grasses and wildflowers were planted, meadow mix kind of thing. And there were grasshopper sparrows there. Lovely, lovely guy. This, again, very early on, no woody vegetation was above that grass line yet. So we're talking about a grassland ecosystem. So great for grasshopper sparrows. And caught quite a few in the first couple of years, but as the shrub density increased and the overall woody vegetation height grew, they dropped off. Now, easy to look at this graph and go, oh no, all the grasshopper sparrows are gone. That's not good. I'm going to tell you to pivot the other way because we're thinking about the project goals. This is a reforestation project. We're not managing for grasshopper sparrow habitat here. Luckily, Mercer County does that in a whole other park that's about 800 acres of grassland. So there's plenty of grasshopper sparrows over there. But this is just a nice way to see. We're going to see this red line a couple times in a row because that's the vegetation growth over time over the last 12 years, 13 now, 14 now. Oh my goodness. But our average canopy height now in 2025 going into 26 is going to be around 20 feet. A lot of tulip poplars and things growing relatively quickly. And that's in the woody areas. It's a random sampling. So our grasshopper sparrow.
No explicit management of the vegetation. You're just letting it go, seeing it develop. Is that correct?
Correct. So deer fence. So there's no herbivory, no deer herbivory, or very limited deer herbivory. Fences break, but. And then there is management in the invasive sense. We do have spot treatments that happen in there. There's areas where vine honeysuckle, for example, has gotten fairly aggressive after establishing a seed bank. Very aggressive vine, for those of you who don't know, very pretty flower, but can be pretty tricky to get rid of. This isn't plant talk, so I won't go too much into it, but the idea being that native plants are fighting two main things in their quest to survive, and that's their more competitive invasive counterparts and the white-tailed deer that are eating them. So deer fence helps with that, and then obviously going in and treating invasives to keep them down is another big part of that. So that's the management taking place within that fence. Another bird that we catch a lot of at Fiddlers Creek, even now, are prairie warblers. They were always semi-present as a passer through, a lot of scrubby habitat around the fenced area that they liked. And so they were always present in at least low numbers. But over time, as that red line goes up, and we get a little more scrubby and a little less meadowy, we end up seeing a whole lot more prairie warblers. So over the years, we've got a peak somewhere around 2020, but again, this is raw data, so it's not smoothed out at all.
Ian, when do we do your count? Are these migration counts, or these resident, or what are they?
Sure. So this is all within that MAPS banding season, which falls end of May, early June through August, early September. So the idea is we're capturing the breeding bird population on the property. Yeah. And another thing that's worth noting with that, especially with numbers like, catching 45, 46 prairie warblers, we're also catching fledglings later in the season, right? We're not only counting adults in these numbers. So we catch a lot of baby prairie warblers, and that's always very exciting because that means that something's working, at least for prairie warblers.
What are for the red line, the woody average height? What are the values on average? Because I guess the y-axis, as you just mentioned, is a number.
Yeah. So great question. The y-axis is for the blue line for the number of birds we encounter is the number of captured birds. For the red line for woody veg, it's average height in feet.
Does that correspond to the y-axis?
Yeah. So about, we're right around that 20-foot average right now. Yeah. And then here's a new one for us in the last couple of years, because like I said, when we started this project a little over 10 years ago, we were catching grasshopper sparrows. I don't know about you guys, but I typically don't associate wood thrushes and grasshopper sparrows together. And neither does the data, because grasshopper sparrows have been gone for a long time. And just in the last couple of years, as that average woody height has crept up, we've started to catch some hatchier wood thrushes, especially later in the season. I think we may have caught an adult this last year, but still later in the season, post-fledge typically. But we are at that point where we're starting to have this young forest, early successional forest ecosystem within this fence, and we're seeing real changes in the bird populations.
Does that mean they're nesting there, or that they're flying through post?
So really good question. And we think, we're seeing still very low numbers of them. We know that they nest in the surrounding area. We know that they're utilizing the habitat for something. We have a feeling that it's that kind of initial dispersal of those hatchier birds in particular. But still notable because we weren't catching them in that initial dispersal for those first several years. So there is some sort of niche habitat need that's being filled right now for wood thrush, at least whether it's kind of, we don't know if it is an incredibly highly productive habitat for them or if it's just a couple that are passing through, but it's something that we never saw before the last couple of years. So
I'm also going to interrupt and say that the people in Zoom usually can't hear us, so if you could repeat the question.
Oh, yeah.
When we get questions, repeat the question. Otherwise, you'll get lambasted at us.
So that last wood thrush question there that I just answered was, do we think that they're breeding in this area or are they just passing through? And so we think that we're mostly encountering young wood thrushes as they first disperse after fledging the nest. But still worth noting for us because we weren't encountering them a few years ago.
Hatchier birds of even deep woodland species, they like scrub habitat.
Incredibly productive, yeah.
Because
Very
protective,
a lot of food. Yeah, it's incredibly useful for them. And that I think is, I'm always hesitant to say anything's very well known because I'm not all that knowledgeable. But I do think that we see a lot of these, deep forest birds utilizing scrub habitat, like you're saying. And this is just good hard data to support that, which is pretty cool. All right, we're going to move on from Fiddlers Creek and talk about some owl work, which is kind of the mode that the organization is in right now, fall and winter. So first off, we'll talk about saw-whet owls. They're just so cute. I'll be happy to go back and we can stare at pictures a little bit later once we're in the question and discussion section. We get some really cool opportunities to take lovely pictures while we have birds in the hand. So yeah, we can, like I said, I'll come back to these because these are just lovely. But this is some neat data. Saw-whet owls, like a lot of different bird species, have kind of a boom-bust population cycle, and they go through these eruptive migrations, right? I'm sure some of you here are familiar with that phenomenon. If not, we'll definitely talk a little bit more about it at the end. But over the years, we've had wildly different saw-whet numbers from year to year, with relatively consistent effort from us on the banding side in terms of net nights and the amount of hours that nets are open and all of that. I will just point out that my first year on the project was 2017. It was a little bit slow, especially coming off that 100 owl year. Everybody was really hyping me up. It was so great last year. We caught so many owls. And then I spent a whole lot of nights sitting and not catching many owls. But I was, rewarded for my patience in 2018 when we caught our record of 329. We had a night that year where we caught 65 owls. And we would be standing at the nets extracting birds while more owls were still flying in. We haven't had anything quite like that, but 2024 was a really strong year. We caught almost 200 birds.
And where is it?
This is all in Mercer Meadows and the Watershed Institute in Mercer County. And I'll mention it now. We'll talk a little more about it later too. But we run public programming for these owl nights. So if anybody ever wants to come see some saw-whets, we can never guarantee anything, but we do all right. This is a good night. This is a very good net check. It's not every net check that you go out and end up coming back with double digits of owls, but we take it when we can. And these are the types of nights where we're running programs, giving a presentation, and then as folks come back from the nets with birds, we bring everybody downstairs and get a chance to watch the banding process. Beyond just slapping bands on birds' legs, we've done a lot of other work with owls as well, including northern saw-whet owls, where we've done some winter habitat studies, and using radio telemetry, we've gone out, triangulated roost locations, and collected pellets to look at diet. But one of our major studies was looking into roost locations, and I'm going to try to drag this. This is risky, what I'm about to do, but I'm going to try it.
Yes.
Hey, we're good. So up in that yellow circle, believe it or not, there's a northern saw-whet owl. Awfully high for a saw-whet, absolutely. The nice thing about them wearing these telemetry backpacks is we can go out with our antenna and triangulate them and find them. So I can confidently tell you that there is a northern saw-whet owl in that yellow circle, even though once you triangulate them and you're staring at that spot for 30, 40 minutes, it might take you 30, 40 minutes with your binoculars to actually find them up there. A notable thing here, though, is that is a deciduous tree. And I think a lot of folks typically associate saw-whets with conifers, eastern red cedar in particular, and not a bad idea to associate them with that. They love that stuff. But over these winter habitat studies, we got to see a pretty neat shift in how they choose their habitat throughout the year. I will just note here before going to the next slide that just last week, we recaptured a couple saw-whets that were banded this season. And they got this season, meaning this fall migration, when we were out in October, November, and they overwintered in our study area in Mercer County, New Jersey, and they got some GPS backpacks fitted to them because just as of last year, there are some GPS transmitters that are cellular that are actually light enough to go on saw-whet owls, which is really cool. 3.3 grams per transmitter. So this is getting back to the telemetry study. We did see a temporal shift in roost habitat selection. So earlier in the season, before the first week and into the first week of January, there's some percentage of saw-whet owls that are choosing to roost in deciduous trees. That's the light gray in this bar graph. So, and earlier in the season, they're actually maybe preferring those deciduous trees. We are thinking that as the winter goes on, snowfall, windstorms, all these things, more and more of the oaks, the hickories, and the other deciduous trees drop their leaves that are kind of still hanging on. And eventually they're so bare that the saw-whets are like, we don't want that anymore. We're going to stick to the conifers where we've got good cover. So this was a neat thing for us to learn in those first couple of years of collecting data on saw-whets over winter and with telemetry. I got to do a lot of chasing saw-whets around with this. Very fun. Gets a little tiring. Sometimes they settle in and you know where they're going to be every day. And then one day they're not there and the whole journey starts over again. All right. And last kind of species highlight for the work we're doing here in terms of banding is going to be long-eared owls, which we were talking about a little bit at dinner. I promise they exist. So this is Tyler with one of our birds that got a GPS tag. So these are tail mounted. And these were, we've done a couple different types of GPS tags on long-eared owls. VHF, where they're a little bit lighter, they're a little bit less expensive. We deploy those and they collect GPS points, but then we need to get within, say, 100 feet of them to download the data remotely. So there's a telemetry aspect to that where we have to go out and find the bird. And then we've also been able to deploy fully remote cellular GPS tags on long-eared owls. And this has led to some, for us, really exciting new information in terms of the species and their habitat selection and life history traits, really. These are those larger GPS tags that get mounted on the bird's back. And these can last us about a year. We program the fixed schedule so that it's the way these work, really simple terms, is after they collect a certain number of points, they send all that data at once. So they do it in one batch to save battery instead of constantly communicating. And with that, we can program them for when they're going to tell us where the bird's at and get a rough idea of the battery life. And we get about 1 full year's worth of data from that. And we'll highlight one owl in particular in a minute, but first we'll look at a few of them all together. This figure was, a version of this was put out in a note that Tyler published while he was at Rutgers. He's got his PhD now, Dr. Tyler, woohoo! But while he was still in grad school, he published this note with WBRG because the first 2 owls, long-eared owls we ever put these GPSs on, if you notice the yellow line there, the northern extent of the long-eared owl range as was published in many field guides, almost every single one of those dots and lines end up above north of that northernmost extent of the range at some point during the year. Some of them much further north. So as soon as we got this, and it was more than one bird doing it, we put out a little note about that just to let folks know that there's a lot to learn about these birds still. And we've gone on some trips up to some of these northern boreal forest kind of habitats, and it's really wild stuff up there. And the long-eareds are using it. The closest we got to one of those birds, it's such vast wilderness. We felt really close to one of our owl GPS points when we were within 100 miles of it. It was like, wow, it's right there. It's right on the cusp, like still trees, still vegetation. But yeah, like right at the line. So talking about getting a full year's worth of data, this is the track of owl number 632, which was originally banded last February. And the last fix that we got from it before that GPS tag died, or actually it might not be dead yet. We just don't know because we won't get more another like round of data from the tag because it's doing that battery saving schedule. We won't get that for another month or two. So we could get more points from this bird still. So what we see here is a relatively consistent migratory track, but not necessarily going to the same overwintering territory. And this is one of our questions that we had with long-eared owls. I'm sure some of you folks may have heard people say like, oh, well, I always see the same long-eared owls in these spots, or like my long-eared owls came back to this tree and it's always three. So they've got to be the same birds. They've got to be the same birds. We don't know if they've got to be the same birds. And, you know, a lot of these owl migrations seem to be, saw-whets are a great example too. We don't recapture birds that we banded the year prior on fall migration, ever. It's not happened to us once. We catch other people's birds, but we don't catch our own birds again. So that winter site fidelity, migration route site fidelity question is still very much up in the air. And that's why some of these full year round GPS points are going to help us answer those questions, which is cool. Whereas songbirds is kind of the polar opposite. You know, those prairie warblers that we catch, we'll catch the same male in the same net sometimes year after year. Maybe there's a year in between where he was in a slightly different part of the, you know, preserve and he didn't end up hitting that net or something. But we'll encounter the same birds again and again. But once the owls migrate north, they tend to come back south to a different location, is what we are seeing at this point. A little early to firmly say that. And now pivoting away from banding discussions, Emmy, who's here with me tonight, is the program coordinator for Hatch 100, which is our effort to, in partnership with FOVOS, which is Friends of Hopewell Valley Open Space, a really wonderful conservation partner. We're working on a bunch of different kestrel boxes within the greater Hopewell Valley area. That's Mercer County, Hunterdon County, Somerset County. We're kind of expanding out, but all in New Jersey, and working with NJDEP and their banding biologists to go out, and our goal is to hatch 100 baby kestrels in our, you know, Hopewell Valley area. So Emmy's done a lot of work and got to peek into a lot of kestrel boxes last year with a camera, and we were really close last year to hitting our 100. So I think this year, with the new boxes in and everything, it's looking good. And I've got more on that when we have questions too. So I'm going to hang here for a second. These baby kestrels are so incredibly cute. I don't know if any of you have ever had the privilege of participating in kestrel banding. I would highly recommend you do it if you can. They are also some of the nastiest, stinkiest little critters in the world, because they're sitting in a box with 4 or 5 of their siblings, with their parents just constantly bringing food, and they don't leave to go to the bathroom. So sometimes they come out pretty crusty. So just it's so nasty that it's almost cute, and they're so cute that it's almost okay that they're so nasty. We have a new, as of last year, project that Emmy and I helped coordinate called Wings Over Mercer. That is actually the way that we got introduced to you folks here, which is really wonderful. Thank you so much for coming out. We'd love to see more of you there next year. And this is a birdathon that we put on in the fall. The boundary is just Mercer County, New Jersey. Make a team, see as many, well, shouldn't say see, identify as many birds as you can in a day. We were really excited for this event last year, and we had a great turnout for our first year putting it together. We had a lot of people who had never birded before sign up. We had a new birder category. So we had a whole lot of people come in. We partnered with Knox to have loaner binoculars to hand out. So we had people come through who had never birded before, walk around the Mercer Meadows loop with some of us, with other people who were participating. It was really, really cool to see new folks get excited about birds. And it was also cool because we hosted our like headquarters area in one of the more regularly walked sections of our park. So we had people who had no idea that we were going to be there walking by, asking us a ton of questions and picking up binoculars, looking through scopes, who had no intent on birding that day, all of a sudden looking at, things like harriers flying through the fields and song sparrows singing and things like that. So really wonderful event. Looking forward to next year. Up in that top right corner, we had one of our volunteers do a big sit for the day, which was really nice too. Just another way to get folks engaged. We did have, that was another way that people who kind of had no intention of birding that day could hang for a couple minutes, learn a little bit about what we were doing, and then be on their way. So yeah, really lovely event. Highly recommend you folks hopefully have a team again. It'd be great. Or more than one. Hey, you guys can get competitive with each other. I don't know. But we had a lot of great prizes, and it was just a blast. Highly recommend. Beautiful place in the fall. Love Mercer Meadows in the fall. The pole farm. So I call it Mercer Meadows. I worked there for a really long time. That's what it is in my head. It's the pole farm. Some of you know that from your birding expeditions. And then just some other programming. Like I already mentioned, we do a lot of different community outreach and engagement by providing these public programs for folks. Man, all the pictures in here have me with a big long beard. I really did have one for a while, but that's me down there looking like, I don't know, Grizzly Adams or something. We provide these programs to the public for our songbird maps banding, as well as owl banding with solid owls in particular. And it's always a lot of fun. Songbirds, we're always catching new and exciting stuff. Highly recommend you guys come out and visit us there too. You can sign up if you follow along. I've got a slide with all of our information on it, and you can follow along and see when we're running programs. The Fiddlers Creek Preserve is also just a great place to go birding, relatively underbirded, so maybe put that in your back pocket. A new thing that we're adding this year is we're hosting some bird walks, so you can follow us along. Our first one is coming up really soon, I think next week or the week after. So that'll be really exciting. And we're partnering with one of our board members, Lindsay McNamara. Beachy Birder is her name on that. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And then little plug for my own thing that I love to do is the World Series of Birding. Some of you folks might participate in that in Jersey. I don't know. But we have a team for the last 5 years. We've participated in the carbon-free division of the World Series of Birding. So we all hop on our bicycles and get up at 2 a.m. and start riding around and trying to count birds. And we ride our bikes for, 14 hours for very slowly for about 60 to 70 miles. And it's a lot of fun. And then I usually sleep better than any other day of the year following that. So a little bit to kind of call you guys to action, if you will. There's a few ways that you can get involved with us. And we'd love to see you participate in any of these different ways. So, of course, we are a small nonprofit. We're always looking for donations, just like everybody else. We have a membership program, so you can look into that. And there's different perks to the membership program that I can't even pretend to remember all of them right now, because it's a decent list. Discounts on books and things like that. And merch. First signups to the bird walks, stuff like that. Those are 3 of the really good ones. There's other good ones too. You can volunteer with us. We're always looking for volunteers in different capacities, whether it's monitoring kestrel boxes, coming out and recording data at the banding station. That's how I started. I was just sitting there with a pen, and now I've got a sub permit to go and band owls and songbirds and all that stuff. So who knows where these things can take you? That's the fun. Come for a bird walk. There it is, the 14th. I knew it was coming up really soon. And we've got, of course, social channels, newsletter that you can sign up for. I proudly proclaim that we are not a very spammy email organization. So sign up confidently with your email for our newsletters. And then the best part is questions and talking about the stuff that I've been talking about, so that I can take a drink of water and let you guys ask me what you want to know.
A quick question here. That 100 goal, temporal fledglings, is that per year or per study?
Per season.
Per
Yeah.
season?
Yeah. Last year, 80 something, 80, 88. I did. It was like right there. Oh God, there's a video of me. I forgot that was in there. So that's our bird of the year. So yeah, I really do. Have you guys ever visited a banding station before? Seen people blowing on birds? Cool. So I'm getting a fat score and looking at the looking for sex characteristics to see if we had a breeding male, breeding female, etc. Yeah, man, I love cedar waxwings. Yes, sir.
You are independent, you are nimble. Based on your findings, you can say, hey, we ought to ask this question and go off in different directions. But you're supported by grant money. Now, when you write a grant application, you say, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to send in progress reports. We're going to stick to what we said we were going to do. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah. So historically, our organization has done a lot of small grant applications for a relatively small amount of money. We have never, if especially in the conservation world, I think, oh gosh, hello. Thinking about what makes a big grant. There's a bunch of zeros at the end. A lot of the time, most of the grant applications that we pursue annually so far throughout our history have been relatively small amounts of money that go into an immediate need, short-term cost that's spent, the report's done, and then we move forward with that. We've purchased GPSs with grants, and then from there, what we do with the data ends up going back to that organization, of course, wherever we get the grant from. And we have a main question, but then the questions that we spin off from that are just kind of icing on the cake, if you will. Other things we've been able to do with that same grant money, the deliverables already been met, whatever that initial question that was in the application was. As we grow, which we're doing right now, and it's lovely. We've got a whole bunch of new members on the board, new ideas coming in. It's really exciting. We're going to start pursuing some of these bigger grants. And, it's a great point that there's clear deliverables in all these grant applications. And that's something that we'll grow into as an organization when we pursue some of these larger sums of money. But again, depending on what we're looking for question-wise, because we're also currently all volunteer. And because of that, limited amounts of time and those sorts of things. So there are questions, as nimble as we are, there are questions that we have that we don't have the time to get after, So these things are slowly changing as we grow. But to answer your question, grants that we've applied for have all been small enough that the deliverable is easily met for us within our capacity. And then we just kind of take the questions from that initial grant application and we're able to expand off of it. Yeah.
Quick on Zoom, do that. So Casey asked, how many of the wood thrush in years after 2020 were recaptures?
I don't think we've had a wood thrush recapture. I think no, at least not year over year. It's a good question. We may have, especially in our fall banding sessions, we get out a couple times after the MAPS season is done. Off the top of my head, I can't remember if we've caught the same bird 2 weeks in a row or something along those lines, but we haven't had a wood thrush come back in a way that would indicate site fidelity in terms of it utilizing the habitat in that way. We are also, I think once we did catch a second year wood thrush, but it's a whole lot of numbers in those spreadsheets. I can't remember, but mostly we're catching hatch years. So no recaptures when it comes to wood thrush year over year. Yet the trees are only getting taller.
What other birds you run into there at Fiddlers Meadow? Is there anything like that in there?
Yeah, we catch both cuckoos. They're
Can you
sporadic.
repeat the question? Repeat the question, please.
Oh yeah, I will repeat the question. Thanks for the reminder. Um, the question was, what other kinds of birds are we encountering at Fiddlers Creek Preserve, which is our songbird banding station in the reforestation area? And one of the species brought up, or two, I guess, are the cuckoos, and we do catch both cuckoo species, black and yellow-billed cuckoos. Um, Again, we don't catch them. We catch some every year. Not super reliable. It's not always. Oh, it's always the, fifth week of the season that we end up catching cuckoos. Nothing like that. But we do catch them, and a lot of white-eyed vireos. Catbirds, by far the most commonly encountered species. I almost did a catbird slide, and then I was like, come on, I'll put something a little more colorful there. But yeah, we catch an absolute ton of catbirds.
Just on the cuckoo back to that, you have any anecdotal feeling whether that's more in years when there's a lot of caterpillars around?
Yeah.
Might want to repeat that.
So the question was, in terms of the cuckoo species, anecdotally, do we think that we catch more when there's a lot of eastern tent caterpillar tents around? And I think the answer is yes, with an asterisk. In years where there's so many that they're absolutely everywhere, the cuckoos are able to find them everywhere. But in some of those kind of medium years where they're really just in these scrubby, younger forest areas, then yeah, we're catching a little bit more. And we see the other thing you got to remember is we're sitting around the table waiting for net checks and things, and we're like hearing and seeing birds that we're not catching. We typically keep an eBird list for the day, so there are a lot of times where we'll hear cuckoos and we won't see them, or we won't catch them. There's an eastern towhee named Earl, and he's been given a name. He has never been given a band though. He hangs out right above our banding table, and it's just uncatchable. So we're engaging with the bird community both in banding and other ways while we're hanging around the station.
Another question on Zoom. Linda asks, is it possible? No, sorry. What research is being done in Costa Rica?
In Costa Rica, that's a really good question, and I hope that the answer soon is something. But in the last several years, we haven't. There was a couple years ago, some of you might remember this, when a big thing happened. We were all wearing masks, kind of slowed down the travel and all that, COVID or something like that. That kind of pumped the brakes on some of our tropics travel. So we haven't been to Costa Rica as WBRG. Plenty of us have gone on our own in different capacities, but we haven't been down there to the Nicoya Peninsula area to participate in any research, start any projects, or continue the original project in a long time. It is regularly talked about on the horizon. Hopefully it'll be back.
Sort of another related question on Zoom. Just curious, this is from Dieter. What hummingbird species from Costa Rica did you show in your start presentation?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. And I didn't put that picture on there. Yeah. It looked like a mango, but I don't know. I was just in Costa Rica and had all this stuff in my head.
Yeah.
I will
look into the feeder in Corpus Christi for 2 days waiting for that guy.
I'm going to trust it. I'm going to trust it. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. I don't even remember what it looked like. I will go back to that. The question was, what is the hummingbird species that was on the first slide? And I don't even remember what it looked like at this point in the slideshow. So we'll circle back. Yeah, we do catch ruby-throated hummingbirds at Fiddlers. We don't ban them. They're the only species we don't ban when we catch them. Question?
Yes, mine's not as interesting. I was just wondering if you have more details on the bird walk 14.
Oh,
Where's that?
the question is, I'm remembering to repeat it. The question is, where is this bird walk on the 14th? And
Not for lunch.
it's I knew that, I just don't know the time. So It is at Fiddlers Creek Preserve, which is that place that I just mentioned we do a lot of banding at, and also I think is underbirded and really cool. I don't know the time, but I will circle back on
It
that. You can
starts at
find
10 a.m. It starts at 10 a.m.,
Adriana.
Ian. It'll go from
Hero.
10 to 12 at Fiddlers. The cost is $5 if you're a member and $15 if you are not a member.
Thank you.
People coming in to save me from afar. I love it. Yeah, magic computer people.
We just put a post up on Instagram.
Yeah, it's on Instagram, it's on the website, and it's in the magic computer with Adriana telling us all about it. Yeah.
Right, a comment and a question, but I'm very excited to hear about what you're doing because so often we just count birds, but we don't necessarily know what that means in terms of the connection between the birds and the environment. And I've volunteered for many years helping lead invasive plants at the John Hines Wildlife Refuge. But it's frustrating because there's not a great deal of continuity, and it's also a very patchy environment with lots of different things happening. Whereas you were able to study the growth of, how the bird populations relate to a steady growth of certain kinds of plants in a very consistent area. A question I'd like to ask is, have you, in addition to just keeping track of the tree height, have you kept any rough census of which plants have succeeded and which haven't, so that you can correlate which birds actually like which ones? To some
Really great question. Yes, I'm going to. Thank you for reminding me. So the question, to boil it down, is, this idea of paired vegetation community and bird data. Are we looking at just overall height? That's the metric that I had in the graphs that I showed a little earlier in the presentation for Fiddlers Creek. Or are we also looking at species composition? What species are growing, what plant species or what bird species are most prevalent during a time within an ecosystem's progression where, say, there's more of one species or another growing. That is all data that we do have, and we are, because gets back to that whole partnership and working together data collection method. We're taking, as WBRG, which is the only hat I actually have left in this pot, we are collecting the bird data and sharing it with the Mercer County Park Commission, which is a hat I used to have, and the Mercer County Park Commission is collecting the vegetation data. So it's a shared effort in that sense. And the vegetation data that's collected every year is done with quadrat sampling random points throughout this 40 acres. And then 1 meter quadrat is dropped. That's a square. Every plant in that square is identified. And then to the species level, and then a 10-meter circle around that square, with the center of the square being the center point. I think it's 10 meters. It's been a couple of years since I worked on that project. We then calculate average vegetation height for woody vegetation, overall like cover classes for what's growing, grasses, forbs like wildflowers and such, shrubs, trees, etc. So there's definitely a degree of species-specific data being collected, and then also a even larger degree of kind of structural component to the habitat data being collected. I hope that answers that question.
Another question on Zoom, but before that, Adriana says, not positive, but I'm pretty sure the hummingbird at the beginning was a female blackthorn.
I could definitely, yeah.
The question from Michael is, are chats still using Fiddlers Creek?
Good question. Yeah, chats, everybody, I love those. Everybody loves those, and they can be tricky. We had kind of a big, steep bell curve with chats at Fiddlers. They were sporadic early on. Then there was a year, I think it was 2 years in a row. 1 year we caught like 6 or 7 breeding chats. Probably vegetation anywhere from 4 to 6 feet, with areas that were 10, 15 already. And, talking about the average vegetation height definitely simplifies what we're talking about in this site. It's a mosaic of different vegetation heights. There are still chats there, I'm sure. I don't know that there are as many chats as that those couple years where we caught 6, and then I think we caught 8 or 10 another year, including some recently fledged hatch years. So we knew that there was breeding success that year, but they have definitely been more sporadic than some of the other species we encounter at Fiddlers Creek.
With a comment on Zoom, Greg, there's a terrific book about Lloyd Banning expedition to Costa Rica, early 80s. His Parrot's Wood by Emma Johnny Fisk. I recommend it. She was something of a legend.
Oh, I love a book recommendation, especially bird book.
No question about the Fiddlers Creek. Is that a public park or so it's gated with a deer fence with public where you go in?
Yep. Question is Fiddlers Creek publicly accessible? And yes, it is. It's a Mercer County Park Commission property. So their website explains all their rules, but it's pretty much a dawn to dusk park. Very small dirt driveway with a small dirt parking lot, can be driven past 10 times without seeing it, maybe. There should be a sign out there. It always gets knocked down. So I won't confidently say there's one, especially after all the snow this year. But it's usually signed. And yeah, there's man gates at a couple points in that trail, and it actually backs up to Fiddlers Creek. That's a classic kind of Sourland, flashy, trickly stream that has things like Louisiana water thrush. There's kingfisher down there sometimes, so it's a cool spot. And not a, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
And then at the pole farm, you showed the long-eared owls in the Southwest. Do you ever ban short-eared owls there?
We have not. The question is, at the pole farm, do we ever ban short-eared owls? It's one of the sites that we work across central Jersey to catch saw-whets and long-eareds, but the pole farm is one of the Mercer Meadows areas, one of the sites that we ban them at. We have never captured short-eared owls there. We've never targeted them. We've never had them as bycatch either. I got really close once. When we were targeting long-eared owls, I had a short-eared owl come in and I got really excited. Didn't happen. That gets back to, it's something that I've brought up, that we've all talked about, especially while we're sitting around waiting for like saw-whet owl net checks and stuff, and we're all talking about what we'd like to do. And it just gets back to, time and resources. Forcing birds is tough, but it would be really cool to do some sort of harrier and short-eared owl work in the future. So fingers crossed. We've talked about it quite a few times.
Is there any barn owl that's going on in Mercer County on the farm over there?
So there's no barn owl projects going on. I know of some people who have reported them. I haven't seen one there or heard one. They definitely were there and could be back. Barn owls are so tricky in Jersey. So no targeted work going on there. And then kind of while we're talking about just different owl species, we have caught, banded, and put backpack on a barred owl. That was one that we did. It was just a radio tag that we had as an extra. And that was a bycatch bird. We were trying to catch long-eared owls and walked up to a barred owl. And we have never successfully banded a great horned owl, but we have had a couple hit nets, and they're just big and strong. And we're not targeting them. These are nets that are sized for saw-whets, not great horn. So it's a little bit different. So yeah, we haven't gotten a great horn banded yet, but I think it'll happen eventually.
You showed us a lot of really interesting data on the succession of flora and fauna within your 40-acre deer exclosure. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure whether this is a question or a comment. Maybe it would be a little more natural to have one deer I don't know how you do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it excluded all large browsers.
Yes.
So it would be different if there was some browsing.
Yeah.
Some browsing and not eating everything right down to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. The comment here is, when you put up in this 40-acre area, you put up a deer fence that completely excludes white-tailed deer. That means you're completely removing deer browse, which is a natural phenomenon, a natural stressor on these plant species. Without any control with our inflated deer populations, this isn't a deer presentation, so I'm not going to go wild here. But these deer or deer and these plants have evolved together, and so in theory, some browse is something that a plant's going to be able to withstand, and that's absolutely true. So would it be more natural to run rough calculations? Okay, 40 acres, what's the historical deer per acre numbers? How many deer would be in this area, and throw them in there? Yes, that would mimic nature better. This is an opinion of mine as Ian, that we have messed with nature so much as a species that there are things that we have to give up a little bit, and perfectly mimicking nature is not something we can ever do. And when we have hundreds, thousands of acres of overbrowsed area, when you get the opportunity to just totally exclude that pressure, to get as close as you can to like a healthy, thriving native plant community, it's just easier to do it that way. Number one. Number two, I said before, fences break. At least once a year, a couple deer get in there, and we just have to go in and run them out and fix the fence. So,
what you're doing is very important. And what I'm suggesting, not even suggesting, commenting, that would be a completely different state.
Yes.
Yeah. You're getting really good data in this set of conditions.
Yes, exactly. And I think the idea is that as we learn and get to look at, when we had chats, for example, they were here for a couple of years and now they're not. Like, what changed? And there are variables beyond our control, right? That could be affecting that. But to a degree, with the data we know, we can say, this particular plant community with this average woody vegetation height was really good for yellow-breasted chat, based on the conditions. And then, ideally, as we move forward, that could mean, and I mean, early successional forest and scrubland is like the hardest thing to manage for, because that's the most invasives are those things. It's inherently an eco type that wants to, or an ecosystem type that wants to go away. It's a middle ground. So those species that really thrive in that, it's hard to manage for just that, because you can't always just be cutting trees down. You gotta move it. Exactly. So when you're stuck in a fence, do that. Yeah. Tell me, good. More questions?
How the hell do you do all your good stuff when it's not your day job? Day job.
Well, I didn't do nearly as much banding this year since I moved to North Jersey. I'll tell you that much. It was a lot tougher for me to get down to these Central Jersey sites. But it's the answer is, the question was, how the heck do you do this while it's all volunteer? Everybody at WBRG is a volunteer.
Yeah.
How do you do that and keep down a day job? I think it's having a really good community within the organization of people that you like being around and talking to, because you have to talk to each other all the time and do a lot of coordination. And just the team that we work with at Wildbird is top notch. Everybody's so committed and just wants to see the success not only of the organization, but like the reason we're there for the organization is for the birds, right? So everybody's really motivated by that. And I think it's just such a great group of people that mesh so well together, that's how we're able to make it happen. Cool. Thank you guys.